Welcome back to the channel, welcome back to another video. This one is player rankings for game week 6, where myself and George from Ingenuity Fantasy make top 10 lists for 6 different categories. So budget defenders, budget mids, premium mids, budget forwards and premium forwards. We're looking at the next 5 game weeks and we're ranking players in those categories. So let's get straight into it. Okay, so starting with the budget defenders. Now, I noticed that you don't have Senesi top. I think if most other people made a budget defender list, and by budget we mean under 5 million, I think 99% of people would have Senesi top. So why? I mean, Van der Ven's great, don't get me wrong, but you think he's better than Senesi?
To be honest, I mean, it is as close to like an even split as it gets with those two. I completely understand why most people would have Senesi top. On another day, there just is a way that I might have Senesi top as well. I just think for me, I'm just so encouraged by those Spurs fixtures. That's all it is. Particularly those next 4 fixtures, where they're looking at Wolves and then Leeds and then Villa, who can't seem to score a goal to save their life, and then Everton. It's just slightly different from, the Bournemouth set of fixtures that includes, City, and then, Crystal Palace, who are doing quite well. So I think it's quite a... it's not like Bournemouth have bad fixtures at all. Bournemouth don't have bad fixtures by any stretch, but I think I'm so excited by Tottenham and what Thomas Frank's got going on that, I mean, even though, they did leak a few, I just still think defensively they are really good.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, they've kind of had games where they're like hit and miss. Like 3 games, they've looked incredibly solid defensively. And then a couple of games, they've looked really quite the opposite, actually. But in general, Frank has got them set up pretty nicely. The only other point on this list, because actually our lists are pretty similar, realistically, Tosin. What on earth is Tosin doing in this list now? Granted, he's 4.5 million, which is pretty cheap for a Chelsea defender. For me, Chelsea aren't that great at defence compared to even the likes of Palace, Bournemouth, Spurs. Not only that, he didn't even start against Man United, so I'm not. Explain it.
So I think Chelsea. The thing is, Chelsea have quite an underrated defence. They are still, top 6 for expected goals against. So in that sense, he just has got the bulk of the starts, and I think he does offer a really cheap way into what is potentially a really good defence. And I think what's even more significant, it's not necessarily just that, it's the fixtures that Chelsea have coming up. They've got Forest, who are kind of faltering, Brighton. Granted, they do have a Liverpool fixture in there. Then they've got Sunderland, Wolves and Burnley, all within their next 6. So Brighton, Forest, Sunderland, Wolves and Burnley within your next 6 is just a fantastic set of fixtures. So even where there is, that bit of concerns about minutes, going into those fixtures as part of the Chelsea defence at that price is pretty much why he finds himself where he is. Granted, the rotation issues, may be there, but I mean, he seems to have got the nod for most of the games. So you can only think that in amongst sort of European games, he may just be rested, when there's fixture congestion.
Yeah, and I guess we're only a Fofana reoccurrence of an injury away from him being probably quite nailed, I guess, which seems like a likely scenario given the recent history. But apart from that, our lists are relatively similar.
I do like, and also I think, I like Diakite. I had Diakite in my list earlier. Are you not slightly concerned at how much they bring him up to speed, or he is fresh back from injury, and Bournemouth's defence has been pretty good without him. So maybe they might not be in a rush to bring him back.
Pretty good without him, but also pretty good with him. I think that he just is going to be first choice for that team. I mean, he came straight back in against Newcastle, so I don't see why then he wouldn't continue to just play and get minutes. And I just really like the Bournemouth defence at the moment. I think that it's one of the biggest surprises for me so far this season that they lost 3 of their back 4 and have seemingly become a better defence since doing so. So, I love the Bournemouth defence. I think it's great. I love Bournemouth in general, to be honest.
Yeah. So again, we find ourselves, I mean, quite similar to last season, we find ourselves just sort of gawking over Bournemouth again. I think it's a testament to how good a manager Iraola is, for sure.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, so that covers budget defenders. On to premium defenders. And we've kind of got similar lists here, just in a pretty different order. So the one thing that is noticeable difference between our lists is that you've got Gabriel and Saliba pretty low. You've got them at 5 and 6, whereas I've got them at 1 and 3. So what's the reason for that?
So I think for me, it's just that I think the way Arsenal set up, especially compared to some of the other sort of players and teams on here, they've got the upside of clean sheets for sure. Don't get me wrong. And, we know that Gabriel can be effective in the air, but they don't really do much as far as from a DEFCON perspective, like some of the other names around them, like your Burns, your Van Dijks, for example. And they don't have as much persistent attacking threat as your Munozes and your Poros. So I think, although the upside from the clean sheet standpoint is definitely there, I think the ceiling just isn't quite what some of the other guys around them is on this list. And they're still there for me. And, I'm pretty sure once they, once that Newcastle fixture's out the way, they will no doubt go even higher. But just for now, I think, their ceiling just does cap them a little bit for me.
Yeah, it's fair. I mean, defensive contributions are not really a thing for them, which they are for others. And like you say, if you get a clean sheet and a defensive contribution threshold point, then you are going to pretty much haul, whereas that's not going to happen with Gabriel and Saliba. I just think that defensively, they look like next level solid, like incredible defensively. So I do think they're probably worth the money. Then the only other thing that I wanted to ask you on your list was I've got Gvardiol at 2. I think that the City defense is looking pretty good. Their fixtures are unbelievable. He doesn't even make your list.
Yeah, I think the thing for me with Gvardiol, I mean, granted, he did get his DEFCON contribution this game, but the game before against Man United, he only had 3. So I'm not sure how consistently we're going to see him touching those numbers. I probably need more of a sample size to say that he's definitely going to be a DEFCON guy. But also, I think part of it comes down to, City seemingly, I mean, City, they're always a bit of a funny team, they'll just kind of concede a goal quite late, every now and then. And, they conceded 2 to Spurs, they conceded to Brighton. They're not as locked down at the back as I think people would like to think. And I just kind of want to see them string a few clean sheets together before I start buying into that side as well. And, especially in terms of Gvardiol from a going forward perspective, last season, that was one of the main reasons he was there, but he's logged 0.00 expected goal involvements in back-to-back games. So, it's not even like the attacking threat has been there for him in these 2 games he's returned either. So all round, clean sheets, not necessarily there yet. DEFCON, he's currently, 50-50 on, and the attacking threat is nowhere near what we saw last season. So that's why Gvardiol, just isn't quite there yet for me. But, that could definitely change with a larger sample size.
Yeah, I think we'll see him slightly differently this season, like you say, in that the attacking threat, I don't think will be there in the system that they're playing for sure. I also don't think he'll be a particularly big DEFCON guy. I think he'll basically be a Saliba, essentially, who has some attacking threat, but not loads, and isn't great for DEFCON. But I personally think that City are going to be much better defensively. They haven't really had the fixtures to show that, I don't think, yet, albeit they have had a couple of nice fixtures and not kept clean sheets in them. But I just think that they've now got a run of very, very nice fixtures. Like the next 4 fixtures are unbelievable for them. So I personally think that with those fixtures, he's worth going for above these other guys, like a Van Dijk who hasn't got the fixtures. Maybe better for DEFCON, but much prefer the fixtures for Gvardiol.
Yeah, and you're the fixtures, as you say, are fantastic. So there is definitely that upside. I just I want to buy into them defensively. I think, again, it's not even that I don't trust them. It's just that I need to see it first before I can hop on board. But yeah, you're right. The potential to is definitely more than there.
Yeah, fair. So that rounds out premium defenders and defenders. We'll be back for the midfielders. Before we get into the midfielders, I just want to mention ingenuityfantasy.com. The website is fantastic, completely free. Do check it out. The link is in the description to this video. All sorts of good stuff on there. Like I say, articles from all sorts of people within the FPL community on differentials, captaincies, wildcards, free hits, all sorts of good stuff. There's the player rankings that we mentioned today, and there is also the transfer wizard, which is a really cool feature. You basically just put in what position you need, you put in how much you've got to spend, and it gives you a ranked list of players to consider for that transfer. So make sure you check it out, ingenuityfantasy.com. The link is in the description. Let's get on to the mids. Okay, so on to the midfielders now, and you've got Caicedo and Enzo at 2 and 3. I do have Enzo in mine at 6. Presumably Caicedo is for his DEFCONs, but yeah, talk to me about both of those.
So, I mean, we'll start with Caicedo. So, I mean, it's worth mentioning that he's currently the third highest scoring midfielder in FPL. Will only cost you 5.6 million. Now, what you get from Caicedo, granted, those attacking returns will probably not be as regular as they have done to start the season. So, you're not getting him for his attacking returns. But what you are getting from Caicedo is potentially the most nailed DEFCON player in the league. You are getting minimum 4 points a game from Caicedo if he stays on the pitch for 90 minutes, for 60 minutes, which he always does. And on top of because of the sheer amount of his DEFCONs, that's also resulting in him having a serious sort of leg into the bonus point system as well, because all these DEFCONs points stack up in bonus points, and as a result of that, he's getting tons and tons of bonus points on top of his DEFCONs. Now, when you throw those two things in, and you throw on top of it, Chelsea having a top 6 expected goals against in the league, so there's always the chance he gets the occasional clean sheet, and if he keeps getting into some of these areas like he does, the very occasional attacking return isn't too bad either. And I think when you pile all of those in and multiply it by how cheap he is, I just think as budget enablers go, he's just a fantastic asset. And Chelsea's fixtures over the next coming 6 games are great as well. They've got Brighton at home, then they do have Liverpool, but then they've got Forest, Sunderland, Spurs, Wolves, and then Burnley. So those Liverpool and Spurs fixtures can be a little bit scary, but those other 4, Burnley, Wolves, Sunderland, and Brighton, are fantastic fixtures as well. So I just think there's a lot to like about Caicedo.
Yeah, I mean, granted, I don't mind him, to be fair. I think that the fixtures get a lot better from game week 9-ish onwards. The fixtures aren't bad now, of course, but I do think they get quite considerably better from game week 9 onwards. So we might see the Chelsea mids slide up my list a bit and Caicedo get introduced. It's one of them difficult things, especially with midfielders. It's one of those where, is he more likely to get defensive contributions in bad fixtures? It's tough, because given that he'll probably be your 5th midfielder, do you bench him in these tough games, or do you play him in these tough games because he's going to get DEFCONs? It's a tough one.
Yeah. I think in that scenario, what you use Caicedo for is you use Caicedo to go and get the expensive front line. You use players like Caicedo to go and get a Haaland if you haven't already, because Haaland at this point, is a no-brainer, but obviously that man is incredibly expensive. So if you need to downgrade someone, particularly in your midfield, downgrading to Caicedo and getting all of that spare cash is not a bad route into Haaland, especially if you only have 2 transfers. So that's part of the value of Caicedo there. Not just his standalone value, but just what you can then do with the money that you save from downgrading.
Yeah, that's fair. This is where, for me, so Reinders is top of my list. He's the same price as Caicedo. I don't understand how Reinders is, firstly, not at the top of your list. But for me, Reinders is Kudus is actually a pretty good option at his price, don't get me wrong. But Reinders is levels above everybody in this list. To me, Reinders is a 7 to 8 million midfielder. If he was priced at that right now, there'd be a world where I'd still potentially have him in my team.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. Big fan of Reinders as well. I think what it is for me, especially when you compare him to someone like a Kudus, is you've got to look to some degree at the underlying numbers and his expected goal involvement, particularly in 2, 3, and 5, which were some of the games against slightly trickier opponents. I mean, Man United are definitely a tricky opponent, but when you're talking about, the likes of Arsenal and Spurs, and he's registered, an XGI of 0.1 against Arsenal, and then 0.1 against Brighton, and then 0.08 against Spurs, and that just means every other game he's just, if City can't get into it, which they've struggled with a couple of times, he's just not. His underlying numbers just aren't screaming that he's going to consistently put up these returns for me, and I think that's why. But obviously, 5.6 million, you're not expecting a return every game. So he is, in that sense. I'm not like, I need it from Reinders. But when you compare him to someone like a Kudus, whose XG is hovering around the 0.5 mark, and he's, I think, leading the league in assists. There's just that little bit extra sort of return, and the fixtures for Spurs are fantastic. So there's just that little bit extra directness and that little bit extra sort of data behind it that just makes me lean towards someone like a Kudus.
Fair. I mean, I think that's probably largely down to the fact that Haaland just absolutely hogs all of the numbers basically in that team, which will continue to happen. But other players will chip in with returns. I mean, Reinders even got defensive contribution points, although it turns out he shouldn't have because he lost to DEFCON after, but we don't need to go into that anyway. The only other player to mention here is Szoboszlai. He finds himself in your list.
Yeah. So Szoboszlai is an interesting one. So I think for me, it's however Liverpool set up, they seem to want to include Szoboszlai somewhere. Whether that's at fullback, whether that's in the middle of the park, whether that's as part of a pivot with Gravenberch or McAllister, they seem to absolutely love Szoboszlai playing, and I think that's nowhere has that been evidenced more by the fact that he's not just playing, he's also getting 90 minutes every single game. So when he's getting 90 minutes every single game, the lowest defensive contributions he's ever got for a game has been 9. So he's a consistent DEFCON candidate. And, he's on the occasional set piece, and he also likes crashing the box. So, if he's starting in midfield, he is a fantastic option. Naturally, that takes a bit of a hit at fullback. But I think, again, he just falls into that category of, if he's going to play, there's going to be DEFCONs every game. And he does, have a bit going forward, especially in terms of set pieces.
Yeah, fair. I mean, when you watch Liverpool, he is pretty much everywhere on the pitch. So you can see why, when he's playing in midfield, he will get these DEFCON points. It's just, I mean, it's a small sample of him playing every single game. And at the moment, we have to go by that, really, because there's nothing else to go by. I just do worry a little bit that he wouldn't start every game. But
yeah, of course.
All we've got to go off right now is that he has. So, yeah, I don't mind it.
But do you know what I mean? Especially with how bad Wirtz has been playing, not even just trying to sneak in that segue, but especially considering how bad Wirtz has been playing. If Szoboszlai gets the nod, especially in that attacking mid position, quite often for Liverpool, then suddenly, he leaps to the top of this list in terms of, where he can be and, the sort of chances he's involved in. So I think, there is actually serious upside in terms of keeping an eye on him as well.
Yeah, agreed. Fair point. Yeah. And moving on to the premiums, Wirtz is nowhere to be seen in either of our premium lists now. Naturally. So that was going to be the only chance to talk about him. So the players to mention here, so Saka has came back into our lists, not only because he came on back from injury and played 45 minutes against Man City, but also because Madueke picked up an injury. So likely to see a lot more of Saka going forward.
Yeah, I mean, for what it's worth, I absolutely love Saka, the profile. I think Arsenal are just such a more high-powered and dangerous attack whenever he's in the team. I think also Arsenal are entering potentially their best run of fixtures that they might get this season. It's looking absolutely fantastic from a fixture standpoint. How much does it change your list, the fact that we're hearing Gyökeres is on penalties over Saka? What does that do for him when you're weighing him up against like a Fernandes, for example?
Yeah, it means that if Saka was definitely on penalties still, he'd be second on this list, basically.
Yeah, same.
On my list anyway, for sure. Because with those fixtures, like you say, and he'd be a captain option in Game Week 7. Game Week 7, Arsenal play West Ham at home. So for that reason, for me, Gyökeres is a captain option, but Saka probably isn't now. However, I was a little bit worried about Madueke getting minutes when Saka was back. So that is a positive. But the fact Saka's not on penalties, it just means that 9.8 or 10 million around that is just a bit expensive for what he is. Yeah. But if we've got no other I mean, Palmer might not be an option anymore. Who knows with him? So it still might be viable.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly what it is for me. That 9.8 isn't cheap, and I think when you're comparing it to someone like Fernandes, who again falls into that category of one of those players with a really nice floor, for bonus points, defensive contributions, but also surprisingly, don't worry, this shocked me as well. Man United have the highest XG in the league this season, which for someone like a Fernandes, who tends to be at the heart of all of that, there is just such good upside that it's really hard to justify that extra 0.8 million for Saka when you've got someone with Fernandez's floor and ceiling right there.
Yeah, I mean, he's got so many routes to points, and I'm pretty sure, I think I saw that he is around second or third behind Haaland for XG. Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, penalties shift that a little bit because he has had a penalty, but nevertheless, very good. The other couple of players we'll touch on here are Eze, because Eze's gone to the bottom of my list, given he didn't start the other day, but he's still pretty high for you.
Yeah, I think, as you mentioned before, I think the Madueke injury just means there's a bit more minutes to go around. And I think, even though Martinelli did score, Arteta seems like he isn't fully trusting Martinelli with starts yet. So I think, Odegaard still being injured, I think it just opens the door to plenty of Eze minutes. And, also, Eze is just an absolute baller. So, on his day, I think, the talent is there. Arsenal still... And Arsenal with Saka back just means their attack gets even more high-powered. So if Eze is on the pitch, he should be a beneficiary of that as well.
Yeah, I somewhat agree here, to be fair. I mean, I think the slight minutes worry just means that he's low on here for me, just because there's actually quite a lot of talent in this list at the moment and quite a lot of good options. One of those being Xavi Simons. He was benched at the weekend. For me, I don't really see that as that much of a bad thing going forward anyway, because I do think that he will play the majority of games, and he's it's a weird one to say, but he's maybe got the benching out of the way now, I guess.
Yeah, I think the reason it's a weird one is because Kudus exists, So if you're looking at Kudus, who's 0.5 million cheaper than Simmons, one of them's getting 90 minutes a game and, plays a really, really direct role in, most of what happens for Spurs going forward. And the other one, when he is on the pitch, does play that role, but just is on the pitch less. It's really, because I doubt you're ever going to end up with Simmons and Kudus in your team. So if you're picking between the two, it's just really hard to go Simmons at the moment while Kudus is nailed for minutes.
At the moment, I just wonder if we've seen a rest from Simmons. No, we're going to see a rest from Kudus at some point.
Yeah,
but
potentially. Definitely one to watch for sure.
Yeah, we're just guessing, really. But that rounds out the premium midfielders, and the midfielders will be back for the forwards. Okay, on to the forwards now, and the budget forwards. Pretty rough, as it is always every single week. But a little bit of hope with Strand Larsen that he is back from injury now. He came on at half-time and played 45 minutes, albeit didn't see much real action because Wolves are pretty terrible. But he did play minutes, so...
Yeah, I think the problem with Strand Larsen right now is if you're looking, let's say you have one midfield spot and one defensive spot, and you have about 8 million to spend on one and 6 million to spend on the other. There is just no planet that you would ever not go cheap in midfield with like a Caicedo or a Reinders, and then not go for like a João Pedro or a Gyökeres up top. So it's pretty much impossible to ever justify, squeezing in like one of these 6.5 million strikers, 6.7 million strikers when you've just got like Gyökeres, João Pedro and Haaland who, just can be squeezed in because of the great budget options in midfield.
Yeah, there's very little reason to pick any of these guys, to be honest. I mean, Thiago was potentially an option. I had Thiago in my team and actually did all right, in all fairness. Like for 6 million, 2 goals in 5 games, can't really complain with it. But seen a few early subs from him, which isn't ideal. So he's probably not an option anymore.
Yeah, I think Richarlison is definitely worth mentioning as well because, anyone spearheading that Spurs attack is going to be fantastic value. Now, the concern about Richarlison has traditionally been his minutes, and we did see a benching for him earlier in the season, but how many more starts would Richarlison have to string together for you to feel actually confident that he is a starting player for Tottenham, in the immediate future.
It's probably, it sounds weird, but it might even be less about Richarlison's starts and more just about what minutes we see from Kolo Muani. Because I think, Tell's the one that started that game where Richarlison didn't, but I don't really see Tell as that much of a threat. Never. It's Kolo Muani that's a threat. Yeah. And it's if we start seeing a lot of minutes from him that I think there could be an issue.
Yeah, I thought it's, if once Kolo Muani's up to speed, though, if we see Richarlison get the nod 2 games in a row, can we then maybe feel confident that he's got it nailed down, or do you think it'll just be a season-long rotation?
I think it'll be a rotation. I think it doesn't help that they're in quite a competitive European competition this season.
Yeah.
So sometimes Richarlison will be playing in those games as opposed to the Premier League games. For me, I just don't think it actually is. Given that there is a genuinely good second backup option, I don't think I could ever go there personally. But the upside is there because that Spurs team is good. Annoyingly.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the final bit of this list I want to talk. I thought my app was broken because it said Calvert-Lewin scored. So I was slightly concerned by that. I was about to take my phone to the repair shop, but I think the main thing for me there is Leeds haven't started too badly as teams go. If DCL is able to string a couple of starts together and gets a couple of returns in them, does he then become a decent option at this at what's quite a low price point?
I actually think he isn't a bad option. Yeah, I mean, Leeds aren't going to be like an unbelievable attack, but I don't think they'll be that bad either. So, and I do think he gets the minutes. At the moment, all the time he's fit, I think he does get the minutes. So 5.5 million isn't actually, that's not bad for him at all. There is other cheap options as well. Like Isidore has looked brilliant so far. It's just whether he is actually nailed with my ender there. Lyle Foster again, 5 million is a bit of a bargain. All these promoted teams have actually got good strikers that if you want a cheap striker, especially if you still need to bench boost soon, then I don't mind them.
Yeah, completely agree.
So that rounds up budget forwards. That was longer than usual, actually. We don't usually talk that long on the budget forwards.
Squeezed a bit more
forwards now. And the top 3 are just the top 3. We probably don't need to go over those guys.
Yeah.
Watkins is obviously sliding down this list because he is useless. And
I think it was a wise scholar we know was begging people to sell Watkins, on Twitter, so that he'd get cheaper, he'd get a lower ownership percentage, and then people like Brad could capitalize off that. Have you finally abandoned the Watkins ship then?
Yeah, I'm no longer on Watkins. I've only because I'm on wildcard though. If I wasn't on wildcard this week, then he would be in my team for 2 more weeks.
Yeah,
begrudgingly, but no, Villa are so bad, so bad right now, like next level bad. He had absolutely nothing in the game against Sunderland until right at the end when Sancho's put one on a plate for him, and he's just completely missed the ball with his head. But besides that, a 10-men Sunderland were better than the 11-men Villa, which is just really worrying for them. So get rid of Watkins.
I think if you're not wildcarding, do you get rid of Watkins? Or do you? This is the issue. So I'm not going to. It would be and I would understand why it would be incredibly begrudging. But back-to-back home games against Fulham and Burnley, you're probably better off using a transfer elsewhere. Now, don't get me wrong, that would absolutely suck. It would absolutely suck. But unfortunately, you are probably best off holding Watkins for at least these next 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's tough, but because they've been really, really bad. But yeah, there is a world where you do hold him, although he might just actually be your option up to Haaland, which again, I don't mind selling him for that reason. But yeah. So then Mateta, he's still quite high on your list, but he's sliding down mine. For me, I am huge on the Palace defence. I think it's fantastic. They get defensive contributions. They look pretty solid. They've got attacking options. But going forward, the Palace attack just isn't doing it for me at all. Yeah,
that's fair. I think for me, granted, some of his XG is definitely inflated from playing West Ham. No offense, but I think the underlying numbers that Palace have going forward are actually way better than I think their attack is given credit for. You know, Mateta had a 0.84 XG against West Ham. He had a 0.6 against Sunderland. He had a 0.8 against Aston Villa. So, you know, if you're hovering between that 0.6, 0.9 region, which he has been for the last 3 games, I think the goals will come. And, you know, Crystal Palace are actually top 3 in the league for XG overall as a team. So I think the firepower is there. And, you know, the stats are saying that, you know, the chances in the Palace attack is there. And, you know, the goal was there, you know, last game, and he's got two goals in 3 games. So I'm actually not that concerned about Mateta personally. I think that, you know, there is actually reason to believe in him.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you own him, he's definitely not a must sell by any means or anything like that. And actually, from on my list, from kind of 6, maybe even 5 down, I don't really like any of the options. So it's not like I particularly hate him over anyone else. I just prefer. There's a lot of good mids right now, and not loads of great forwards besides those top 3. So I just don't think there's a world where you buy Mateta at this point. But
yeah.
Speaking of other forwards, Isak. Now, like I say, he's 5th in my list, but that's kind of by default, just because I don't really like any of the other forwards, and I do think that he'll get a reasonable amount of minutes. You don't think that?
I think he's still getting up to speed. I think Liverpool have, you know, he is at the moment playing in the position that is most subject to rotation. I think, you know, that striker spot is getting rotated way more than left wing, way more than right wing. And, you know, even Wirtz and Szoboszlai seems, you know, we don't know if that's going to be a rotation yet or, you know, what happens there. But there's a lot of uncertainty in this Liverpool team for anyone not named Salah, I think. And what that means is over a congested fixture period, we just can't trust Isak's minutes enough for him to be above 8th. Now, if we do in a couple of weeks' time, if he does seem to nail down that spot, or he seems to get, you know, the priority in the Prem and Ekitike moves out left, then, you know, stuff will change. But while he is, you know, on essentially the rotation chopping block every single week, it's just hard to put him above everyone else above him who is, you know, likely going to be starting, you know, most games and getting the lion's share of the minutes.
Yeah, that's completely fair. And I do agree with everything you said, to be fair. And like I say, yeah, this isn't like the fact that he's gone higher at my list, that little green arrow, and the fact he's 5th might look like positivity from me on him, but it's not particularly really. I wouldn't buy him. I'm not saying that he's a good option right now. I'm just saying that I prefer him to some of these other options. So, I mean, like I say, 1, 2, 3, and actually Evan Nilsson at 4. I do like all of them options. So I don't really think you need to go Isak at this point anyway.
Yeah, completely agree.
But that rounds up the premium forwards and the forwards. Thank you for watching. If you like the video, do hit like, do subscribe. Check out ingenuityfantasy.com. The link is in the description. We'll be back and we'll see you next week.